Chapter 1. A Curious Mind. In the beginning, there was a boy named Bill Gates. Born on October 28, 1955, in Seattle, Washington, Bill was a curious child. He loved books, lots of them. Fiction, science, history, anything that made him think. His parents, William and Mary, encouraged him to explore the world through reading, through learning. They believed in the power of education and wanted their children to be ambitious, to be independent. Bill had two sisters, Christy and Libby, and they all grew up in a warm, close family. But Bill was different. From a young age, Bill showed signs of brilliance. He was always asking questions, always trying to figure out how things worked. If something was broken, he didn't just want to fix it. He wanted to understand why it broke in the first place. His mind never seemed to stop. Even in school, he was restless. The regular lessons were not enough to satisfy his hunger for knowledge. His teachers noticed this too. They said Bill had a unique way of looking at the world, one that was far beyond his years. But it wasn't just books that fascinated him. There was something else, something that would change his life forever. It happened when he was 13 years old, in middle school. One day, his school got a computer terminal. Now, this wasn't like the computers we use today. No screens, no colorful graphics, just a box with blinking lights, a keyboard, and a printer. It was called a teletype. Most students weren't interested. It seemed too complicated, too boring. But not for Bill. When he saw that machine, something clicked inside him. Bill spent hours at that terminal, learning how to code. He didn't care that the programs he created were simple. He loved the process. It was like solving a giant puzzle, and Bill was determined to find every piece. He would often stay after school, working late into the night. Sometimes, he even snuck into the school to use the computer when no one was around. He was obsessed, but in the best way possible. Bill wasn't alone in this new passion. He met a boy named Paul Allen, who was also fascinated by computers. Paul was a bit older than Bill, and the two became fast friends. Together, they spent their time experimenting with different programs and learning everything they could about computer systems. They were like two mad scientists mixing different formulas, trying to create something new. And even though they didn't know it yet, this partnership would one day change the world. As Bill continued his education, his love for computers only grew stronger. But at the same time, his academic life became more complicated. He attended Lakeside School, a private prep school, where he excelled in subjects like math and science. But he wasn't the easiest student to teach. Bill had his own way of doing things. Sometimes he would argue with his teachers, challenging their methods. He wasn't being difficult just for the sake of it. He truly believed there was a better way, a faster way, to solve problems. Bill wasn't just learning. He was already thinking like an innovator. During high school, Bill and Paul found ways to use their programming skills to make money. They even got hired to write software for a company called Information Sciences, Inc. They weren't even out of school yet, and they were already making a name for themselves in the world of technology. But for Bill, this was just the beginning. Bill's parents, especially his mother, wanted him to go to college. They had big dreams for him, maybe becoming a lawyer like his father. And so, after graduating from Lakeside, Bill was accepted to one of the most prestigious universities in the world, Harvard. But even at Harvard, Bill couldn't shake his obsession with computers. He spent more time in the computer lab than in his classes. While his friends were focused on their studies, Bill was focused on something else. He was chasing an idea, a vision of the future where computers would be a part of everyone's daily life. It wasn't long before Bill would make one of the biggest decisions of his life. In 1974, while still at Harvard, Bill came across a magazine called Popular Electronics. On the cover was a new kind of computer, the Altair 8800. This small personal computer was the first of its kind, and Bill instantly saw its potential. He and Paul Allen knew that the future of computing wasn't with big machines used by companies, but with personal computers, computers that could fit in people's homes. Bill made a bold decision. He dropped out of Harvard. His parents were worried, but Bill knew what he was doing. He wasn't quitting. He was just taking a different path, a path that would lead to the founding of Microsoft. Together with Paul, Bill moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where the Altair was being developed. They wrote a version of BASIC, a programming language for the Altair, and it was a huge success. From that moment on, Microsoft was born. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Bill's journey was just beginning. This young boy, who once loved books and puzzles, had found his true passion. And now, he was ready to change the world, one line of code at a time. As we close this chapter, let's reflect on how one moment, one spark of curiosity, can change everything. For Bill Gates, that moment came when he first saw a computer. It was a moment that lit a fire inside him, a fire that would fuel his drive to create, innovate, and push the boundaries of technology. And this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The Harvard Days and a Big Decision. Harvard University, one of the most famous schools in the world. It's a place where some of the brightest minds go to learn, to prepare for their futures. And guess who went there? Bill Gates. Yes, Bill was accepted into Harvard in 1973, a dream come true for many students. But for Bill, something felt different. While his friends were diving deep into their studies, law, medicine, politics, Bill's mind was somewhere else. It wasn't on textbooks or lectures. No, it was on computers. You see, Bill Gates had found his passion early in life. Computers fascinated him, and that fascination didn't stop when he got to Harvard. In fact, it grew stronger. Instead of spending hours in the library, Bill spent most of his time in the computer lab. He would stay up late into the night, typing away on the school's machines, learning everything he could about programming. His love for computers, for coding, was undeniable. And while Harvard was full of brilliant students, no one had quite the same drive as Bill when it came to this new world of technology. But it wasn't just computers that were on Bill's mind. There was also a magazine, yes, a magazine that changed everything. In 1974, Bill came across a copy of Popular Electronics. The cover caught his eye. It featured something called the Altair 8800, a small computer kit designed for hobbyists. It wasn't like the giant machines he had worked on before. This was different. This was personal computing. And for Bill, it was the future. He quickly called his friend, Paul Allen, who was working in Boston at the time. Paul was older, just as fascinated by computers as Bill, and when they saw the Altair, they both realized something big was about to happen. The future of computing wasn't going to be limited to big businesses or government labs. It was going to be in people's homes. Personal computers could change the world. And Bill, he wanted to be a part of that change. But how? Bill and Paul didn't have the resources to build computers themselves. What they did have, however, was programming knowledge. They quickly decided to write a version of the basic programming language for the Altair. The goal was simple: make it easier for people to use the computer. With BASIC, users could give instructions to the machine in a simpler, more intuitive way. Bill and Paul worked tirelessly on the project, coding day and night. They didn't even have an Altair to test their program on. They were coding blind, using nothing but their knowledge and instinct. In early 1975, Paul flew to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where the Altair was being developed. They ran the code, and it worked. BASIC ran perfectly on the Altair, and the people at the company were impressed. This was it. Bill and Paul realized they were on the verge of something huge. They were no longer just two young guys obsessed with computers. They were about to start a company. And this company? It would be called Microsoft. But there was a problem. Bill was still a student at Harvard. He was walking the halls of one of the most prestigious universities in the world. His parents, especially his mother, had big dreams for him. They thought he might become a lawyer, maybe even follow in his father's footsteps. Dropping out of Harvard wasn't part of the plan. It was risky, very risky. But Bill couldn't ignore the pull of the future. He believed in the personal computer revolution. He believed that Microsoft could change everything. And so, in 1975, Bill Gates made one of the biggest decisions of his life. He dropped out of Harvard. He left behind the certainty, the prestige, the path that so many expected him to follow. Instead, he chose to follow his passion, his vision. And it wasn't easy. Bill knew the stakes were high, but he also knew that if he didn't take the chance now, he might never have the opportunity again. Bill moved to Albuquerque to join Paul Allen, where the Altair was being developed. Microsoft was officially born. At first, it was just the two of them, working out of a small office. They were a tiny company with a huge ambition to create software that would power the personal computers of the future. Bill was only 20 years old, but he was already leading his own company. He wasn't just a programmer anymore. He was an entrepreneur, a visionary. But even in those early days, Bill had a clear idea of what he wanted Microsoft to be. He didn't want to just make software for one computer. No, his vision was much bigger than that. Bill wanted Microsoft to create software for all personal computers. He believed that one day, every household, every office would have a computer on the desk. And when that happened, Bill wanted Microsoft to be at the center of it all. Bill's decision to drop out of Harvard wasn't easy for his family to accept. His mother, in particular, worried about his future. But Bill was confident. He knew that this was his path. And so, as Microsoft began to grow, so did Bill's confidence. He and Paul continued to develop software, landing more contracts with computer manufacturers. The company was still small, but they were starting to get noticed. As we end this chapter, think about that moment of decision. Bill Gates, a young man at Harvard, faced with a choice. Stay in school, follow the path set before him, or take a leap into the unknown, chasing a dream that seemed impossible at the time. Bill chose the leap. And that leap, it led to Microsoft, to the rise of personal computing, and to a future no one could have imagined. This was just the beginning of Microsoft's story. But more than that, it was the beginning of Bill Gates becoming the man who would change the world of technology forever. With every bold decision, every risk taken, Bill was moving closer to making his vision a reality. And now, the world was about to feel the impact of what that vision would bring. Chapter 3. Microsoft, the Beginning. 1975, Albuquerque, New Mexico. A young Bill Gates, just 20 years old, stood at the edge of something big. He and his childhood friend, Paul Allen, were starting a company, a small one, but a company with a huge dream. They named it Microsoft. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't glamorous. Just a small office, a few desks, and two brilliant minds full of ideas. In those early days, Microsoft was nothing more than Bill, Paul, and a couple of other programmers. They worked long hours, coding late into the night, driven by excitement and the belief that they were on the verge of something revolutionary. Their focus? Software. While other companies were focused on building hardware, big, heavy machines, Bill and Paul believed that the real power of computers lay in the software. Software could unlock the true potential of these machines, and they were determined to build the software that would change everything. Their first big project? Writing a version of the basic programming language for the Altair 8800, the first personal computer. BASIC was a simple language that made it easier for people to communicate with computers. And it worked. Microsoft's version of BASIC was a hit. More and more computer companies began to notice Bill and Paul's work. Microsoft was slowly gaining traction, but it was still a long way from becoming the giant it would one day be. For Bill, this wasn't just about making money. He had a vision. He believed that one day computers wouldn't just be for scientists or large companies. No, Bill imagined a future where every person would have their own computer, on their desk, in their home, and even in their pocket. This dream was radical at the time. Personal computers were still rare, and most people didn't see why they would need one. But Bill saw it clearly. He knew that computers had the power to change the way we live, work, and think, and he wanted to lead that change. But Microsoft was still small. Bill and Paul faced challenge after challenge. Competition was fierce. Bigger companies with more resources were constantly trying to outdo them. And money? There wasn't much of it. Bill had to be careful with every dollar. Every decision mattered. But even in the face of these challenges, Bill didn't lose faith. He was focused, determined, and tireless. He believed in Microsoft, and he believed in his vision. As the company began to grow, so did Bill's responsibilities. He wasn't just writing code anymore. Now, he was also running the business, negotiating contracts, hiring employees, making sure everything ran smoothly. It was a lot of pressure, but Bill thrived on it. He was a natural leader, though sometimes tough. He expected a lot from his team, long hours, hard work, and complete dedication. Some people thought he was too demanding, but Bill had one goal in mind: success. And that success came in 1980, when Microsoft made a deal that would change everything. IBM, one of the biggest computer companies in the world, was working on its first personal computer. They needed an operating system, software that would help users interact with the machine. Microsoft didn't have an operating system ready, but Bill, he saw an opportunity. He made a deal with IBM to provide one. Now here's where things got interesting. Bill and Microsoft didn't actually create the operating system themselves. Instead, they bought a small system called QDOS from another company, made a few changes, and renamed it MS-DOS. They licensed it to IBM, and in 1981, the IBM PC hit the market. It was a massive success. And because of that deal, MS-DOS became the standard operating system for personal computers. Microsoft was on the map, but Bill was clever. He didn't just sell MS-DOS to IBM. Instead, he licensed it. This meant that Microsoft could sell the same software to other companies as well. So, as more and more companies started making personal computers, they all needed an operating system. And Microsoft, they had it. MS-DOS was everywhere, and Microsoft's influence grew. Bill's dream of putting a computer on every desk and in every home was starting to feel possible. As Microsoft grew, so did Bill's responsibilities. He was no longer just a coder or a small business owner. Now, he was the CEO of a growing technology company. Bill was involved in every detail: product development, strategy, marketing. He was known for being intense, for pushing his team to the limit. He wanted Microsoft to be the best, and he wasn't willing to settle for anything less. But even as Microsoft expanded, Bill never lost sight of his ultimate goal: making computers accessible to everyone. He didn't just want to sell software to businesses. He wanted regular people, students, families, small business owners, to have the power of computing at their fingertips. And that's where Microsoft's next big project came in: Windows. Windows wasn't just another operating system. It was designed to make computers easier to use, with a graphical interface, meaning that instead of typing commands, users could simply point and click. It was revolutionary, and Bill knew it. In 1985, Microsoft launched the first version of Windows. It wasn't perfect, but it was the beginning of something huge. Windows would eventually become the most popular operating system in the world, used by millions of people every day. As we end this chapter, let's take a moment to reflect on what Bill and Paul achieved in those early years. From a small office in Albuquerque to partnering with IBM, Microsoft had come a long way. But the real story wasn't just about business deals or software, it was about vision. Bill Gates didn't just see the future, he shaped it. He believed that computers had the power to change the world, and he was determined to make that vision a reality. It's easy to look back now and see Microsoft as the giant it is today. But back then, it wasn't certain. It was a risk, a huge risk. Bill left college, gave up a traditional career path, and poured everything he had into this dream. And in the face of challenges, competition, and uncertainty, he never gave up. As the company continued to grow, Bill Gates was just getting started. The next chapter would bring even greater challenges, bigger successes, and more bold decisions. Microsoft was rising, and Bill's dream? It was becoming a reality, faster than anyone could have imagined. Chapter 4: The Rise of MS-DOS. Microsoft's big break came in 1980. Bill Gates, still in his early 20s, was already dreaming big. He knew that personal computers were going to change the world. And now, an incredible opportunity was about to knock on Microsoft's door. IBM, one of the biggest companies in the world, a giant in the tech industry, was working on something new. They were building their own personal computer, the IBM PC. But there was one problem. They needed an operating system, software that could run the computer. IBM had the hardware, but they didn't have the software to make it work, and that's when Bill Gates saw his chance. IBM approached Microsoft with a question. Could they provide an operating system for the new PC? Now, this was huge. Getting a deal with IBM could put Microsoft on the map in a big way. But there was a catch. Microsoft didn't actually have an operating system at the time. They had worked on programming languages, like BASIC, but not on the kind of software IBM was asking for. Most people would have seen this as a problem. But Bill? He saw it as an opportunity. Bill made a bold move. He told IBM that Microsoft could deliver the operating system they needed. He didn't know how they would do it yet, but he knew they could. And with that promise, Microsoft was suddenly in the race. But Bill had to move fast. He couldn't waste any time developing an operating system from scratch. So, instead of building one, he went out and found one. There was a small company in Seattle that had created a simple operating system called QDOS. It wasn't perfect, but it had potential. Bill quickly made a deal. He bought the rights to QDOS for $50,000, an amount that would seem tiny compared to the billions Microsoft would later make from it. Now that Microsoft owned QDOS, they needed to make some changes. Bill and his team worked hard to improve it, refining the code, fixing bugs, and making it fit for IBM's new PC. The result? MS-DOS, Microsoft Disk Operating System. It was simple, functional, and exactly what IBM needed. In 1981, the IBM PC launched, and with it, Mississippi DOS. It wasn't flashy. There were no windows, no mouse, no colorful graphics, just a black screen with a blinking cursor where users had to type commands. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that MS-DOS worked. It was reliable. It did its job. And it quickly became the standard operating system for IBM's personal computers. But Bill's genius wasn't just in delivering MS-DOS to IBM. No, Bill made a much smarter move. Instead of selling the software to IBM outright, Microsoft licensed it. This meant that while IBM could use MS-DOS for their computers, Microsoft still owned the software. And that was the key. Because as personal computers became more popular, other companies also needed an operating system for their machines. And Microsoft was ready. They could sell MS-DOS to anyone who wanted it. So while IBM's computers sold millions, Microsoft's software was being used by everyone. Suddenly, Microsoft was everywhere. MS-DOS wasn't just an operating system. It was the operating system for personal computers. And Bill Gates had made one of the smartest business moves in history. MS-DOS was a hit, and Microsoft was on its way to becoming a tech giant. But Bill didn't stop there. He had big plans for the future. He knew that personal computers were only going to get more popular. And as more and more people started using computers, they were going to need better, easier-to-use software. MS-DOS was good, but it was just the beginning. Bill was already thinking about what would come next. Behind the scenes, Microsoft was working on something new, something that would change the way people interacted with computers. But before that came to life, MS-DOS continued to dominate. By the mid-1980s, millions of computers around the world were running on MS-DOS. And Microsoft? They were making a fortune. The company was growing fast, and Bill Gates was quickly becoming one of the most powerful figures in the tech world. But with success came challenges. Competitors began to emerge, and some people criticized Microsoft's aggressive business tactics. Bill was known for being tough, for driving hard bargains, and for doing whatever it took to win. Some called him ruthless, but Bill didn't see it that way. He saw it as necessary. After all, in the fast-moving world of technology, if you weren't ahead, you were behind. And Bill Gates had no intention of falling behind. The success of MS-DOS transformed Microsoft from a small software company into a global powerhouse. Bill's vision was starting to come true. He had always believed that personal computers would be everywhere, and now they were. Thanks to MS-DOS, Microsoft was at the center of the personal computer revolution. But even with all this success, Bill Gates wasn't satisfied. He knew there was still so much more to do. MS-DOS was powerful, yes, but it wasn't easy to use. Most people didn't want to spend their time typing commands into a computer. They wanted something simpler, something more intuitive. And Bill had an idea that would become Microsoft's next big step. For now, though, Mississippi, DOS reigned supreme. It was the operating system that changed everything. It gave Microsoft the platform it needed to grow, to expand, to innovate. And for Bill Gates, it was just the beginning of a journey that would take him and Microsoft to unimaginable heights. As we close this chapter, let's remember the importance of bold moves. Bill Gates saw an opportunity where others saw a problem. He didn't let the fact that Microsoft didn't have an operating system hold him back. Instead, he took a risk. He made a deal. And that risk, it paid off in a big way. The rise of MS-DOS wasn't just a business success. It was the foundation of Microsoft's dominance in the tech world. It was the beginning of Bill Gates' rise to becoming one of the most influential figures in technology. And it showed the world that Microsoft was a force to be reckoned with. But as we'll see in the next chapter, Bill wasn't done. Far from it. He was already thinking ahead, and what came next would change everything. Chapter 5. Windows to the World. Then came Windows. The year was 1985, and the world was about to change once again. Bill Gates had already made a huge impact with MS-DOS, the operating system that powered millions of computers around the world. But Bill, he wasn't satisfied. He knew that for personal computers to truly reach everyone, they needed to be easier to use, simpler, more intuitive. And that's where Windows came in. For years, personal computers had relied on text-based commands. Users had to type lines of code to open programs, move files, or do just about anything. It was powerful, yes, but it wasn't friendly. Most people found it difficult and frustrating. Bill saw this as a barrier that was holding back the full potential of personal computers. And so, he envisioned something different. Something that didn't require users to memorize commands or deal with a black screen. He dreamed of an interface where people could simply click. In 1985, that dream became a reality. Microsoft released the first version of the Windows operating system. It was a bold new idea, a graphical interface that allowed users to open programs with the click of a mouse. Instead of typing commands, users could now point to icons on the screen, click, and watch their computer respond. For the first time, computers became truly user-friendly. Windows wasn't just about making things easier. It was about opening up the world of computing to millions more people. Suddenly, you didn't need to be a computer expert to use one. You could simply sit down, click a few buttons, and get started. It was revolutionary. And for Bill Gates, it was another step toward his ultimate goal, bringing computers to everyone, everywhere. But the road to success wasn't easy. The first version of Windows had its challenges. It was slow, clunky, and not as powerful as some people hoped. Critics said it wasn't ready, that it was too basic. But Bill knew this was just the beginning. He wasn't discouraged by the initial setbacks. He believed in the vision of Windows, and he knew it had the potential to change the way people interacted with computers forever. And he was right. Over the next few years, Microsoft worked hard to improve Windows. They listened to feedback, fixed bugs, and added new features. In 1990, they released Windows 3.0, the version that would finally take off. It was faster, more stable, and had a range of applications that made it incredibly useful. Businesses started adopting it, schools began using it. And soon, homes all over the world had a computer running Windows. By the mid-1990s, Windows was everywhere. Bill's vision of bringing personal computers to the masses was becoming a reality. Millions of people, students, workers, families, were now using Windows every day. It was no longer just a tool for experts. It was for everyone. And Bill Gates, he was at the center of it all, leading Microsoft into a new era. But why was Windows so important? It wasn't just about making things easier. It was about making technology accessible. Bill believed that technology should empower people, not intimidate them. He wanted to create a world where computers could help people work faster, learn more, and connect with others. And Windows was the key to unlocking that potential. One of the most powerful aspects of Windows was its versatility. It wasn't tied to any specific hardware. It could run on different types of computers made by different companies. This flexibility meant that as the personal computer market grew, Windows grew with it. Microsoft didn't just sell software. They became the foundation on which other companies built their computers. It was a brilliant strategy, and it allowed Microsoft to dominate the operating system market. As Windows spread across the globe, Bill Gates became one of the most influential figures in technology. He was no longer just the young, ambitious programmer from Seattle. He was now the leader of a company that was shaping the future of the digital world. But with that power came new challenges. By the late 1990s, Microsoft had grown so large that it started to face criticism. Competitors accused Microsoft of using its dominance to crush the competition. The U.S. government took notice, and in 1998, Microsoft faced a major antitrust lawsuit. The government claimed that Microsoft was unfairly using its power to maintain its monopoly over the software industry. For the first time, Bill Gates and Microsoft found themselves on the defensive. The trial was long, difficult, and at times very public. Bill was questioned, sometimes harshly, about Microsoft's business practices. It was a challenging time for the company. But even as Microsoft fought legal battles, Windows continued to grow. By the year 2000, Windows was running on more than 90% of the world's personal computers. Bill Gates had achieved what many thought was impossible. He had made personal computing universal. But Bill's journey wasn't just about software. It was about creating a new way of life. With Windows, people could now work from home, write documents, connect to the internet, and communicate with friends and family across the world. It was more than just a tool. It was a window into a new era of technology and communication. As we end this chapter, it's clear that Windows wasn't just another piece of software. It was a revolution. It changed how people interacted with technology and brought computers into everyday life. Bill Gates didn't just create a product. He created a new way for people to experience the digital world. But this was still only the beginning. Bill had accomplished so much, but his vision went far beyond operating systems. He had bigger plans that would take him from the world of technology to the world of philanthropy, changing not just how people worked, but how they lived. For now, though, we close the chapter on Windows, a software that opened the door to the future. And behind that door, more innovation, more ambition, and more impact. Bill Gates had changed the world once, and he was ready to do it again. Chapter 6. The Battle for the Internet. In the 1990s, a new force was changing the world: the Internet. It was fast, exciting, and full of possibilities. Suddenly, people could connect with each other in ways that had never been possible before. Information was just a click away. Companies started to see the potential, and one company in particular was leading the charge: Netscape. They were known for their web browser, Netscape Navigator, and quickly became the top choice for people exploring the internet. But Bill Gates? He wasn't about to sit on the sidelines. He saw the internet's potential too, and he knew that Microsoft had to act, and fast. Up until then, Microsoft had been focused on software like Windows and MS-DOS, but the internet was a whole new world. A world that could make or break the future of computing. Bill understood one thing clearly: whoever controlled the gateway to the internet, the browser, would control the future of technology. Netscape Navigator was already winning the browser war, but Bill wasn't ready to give up. He had a plan. And that plan? Internet Explorer. Microsoft quickly got to work. They developed Internet Explorer, a web browser that would be bundled with their Windows operating system. This meant that whenever someone bought a new computer with Windows, they automatically got Internet Explorer with it. They didn't have to download it, buy it, or even think about it. It was just there, ready to go. This gave Microsoft a huge advantage over Netscape. The battle for the Internet had officially begun. At first, Internet Explorer wasn't as popular as Netscape Navigator. People were used to Netscape, and they liked it. But Microsoft was relentless. They improved Internet Explorer with each new version, adding features, making it faster, and pushing it aggressively in the market. Bill wasn't just aiming for success, he wanted to dominate. He wanted Internet Explorer to become the browser that everyone used. Soon, Internet Explorer began to catch up. Microsoft's strategy of bundling the browser with Windows worked, and Internet Explorer started taking over. By the late 1990s, it had overtaken Netscape as the most popular browser in the world. Microsoft had won, or so it seemed. But success came with a price. Not everyone was happy with the way Microsoft was handling the competition. People started to notice that Microsoft was using its power in a way that felt unfair. By bundling Internet Explorer with Windows, they were making it very difficult for other companies, like Netscape, to compete. Some argued that Microsoft wasn't giving users a choice. If they already had Internet Explorer installed on their computers, why would they bother downloading something else? The U.S. government began to take a closer look at Microsoft's business practices. They believed that the company was using its dominance in the software market to crush its competitors in the browser war. And so, in 1998, Microsoft faced one of the biggest challenges of its history, a major antitrust lawsuit. The U.S. Department of Justice accused Microsoft of being a monopoly, saying that they were trying to unfairly control the Internet by forcing people to use Internet Explorer. The trial was huge. It was all over the news. For the first time, Bill Gates and Microsoft found themselves under intense public scrutiny. Bill, who had always been known for his brilliance and leadership, now had to defend himself in court. It was a difficult time. His every word, every move was being watched. And during the trial, things didn't always go smoothly. At times, Bill's responses seemed defensive, even evasive, which only made things harder for Microsoft. The media showed clips of him being questioned, and some of his answers didn't sit well with the public. It was a side of Bill Gates the world hadn't seen before. The trial dragged on for years, and the pressure was mounting. For Bill, this was more than just a legal fight. It was a battle for Microsoft's future, for everything he had built. He knew that if the courts ruled against Microsoft, it could mean big changes for the company, possibly even breaking it apart. But even in the face of all this, Bill never lost his focus. He was determined to keep pushing forward, to find a way through the storm. He believed in Microsoft, and he believed in the decisions he had made. The Internet was too important to give up on, and Bill wasn't going to back down easily. In the end, Microsoft reached a settlement with the U.S. government in 2001. The company agreed to make some changes in the way it did business, but they avoided being broken up. It was a victory, though it came at a cost. The legal battles had taken a toll on Microsoft's reputation, and for the first time in a long while, the company looked vulnerable. But even with the lawsuit behind him, Bill knew the world of technology was changing rapidly. The Internet was now an essential part of everyday life, and new competitors were emerging. Companies like Google, which was quickly becoming a dominant force in the world of online search. The tech landscape was shifting, and Bill understood that Microsoft needed to adapt. As we end this chapter, we can see how Bill's battle for the Internet wasn't just about winning market share or beating competitors. It was about shaping the future. Bill Gates believed in the power of the Internet, and he saw it as the next big frontier for technology. But this battle also showed that even the most successful companies can face challenges: legal, ethical, and competitive. Bill Gates came out of this trial with lessons learned. Microsoft had won the battle for the browser, but the Internet? The Internet was still evolving. And Bill? He was already looking ahead, ready for the next big challenge. For now, though, let's close this chapter by remembering the intensity of the fight. Bill Gates took risks, made bold moves, and fought fiercely to secure Microsoft's place in the world of the Internet. But this wasn't the last challenge he would face. There were bigger, more personal battles waiting for him in the years to come. Chapter 7. The Antitrust Trial. The year was 1998. The world was changing fast, and so was Microsoft. The company was at the top of its game, dominant in the tech world, with Windows running on more than 90% of personal computers around the globe. Bill Gates had made his vision of putting a computer on every desk and in every home a reality. But success came with a price. The U.S. government had been watching Microsoft closely, and they weren't happy with what they saw. They accused Microsoft of being a monopoly. The charge? The company was using its power to crush its competitors, unfairly controlling the market. Microsoft was bundling Internet Explorer with Windows, making it hard for other web browsers like Netscape Navigator to compete. The government claimed that Microsoft was stifling innovation, making sure no one could challenge them. And Bill Gates? He found himself in court, facing one of the biggest challenges of his life. For the first time, Bill, who had always been in control, was on the defensive. The U.S. Department of Justice filed an antitrust lawsuit against Microsoft, and the case quickly became headline news. The world was watching. Microsoft had built an empire, and now that empire was under attack. Bill Gates had always been known for his sharp mind and clear vision, but in court, things didn't go as smoothly as he might have hoped. During the trial, Bill was questioned for hours, and the media broadcast clips of his deposition. Some of his answers seemed vague, even evasive. At times, he appeared frustrated, and the tension was clear. The world saw Bill Gates, one of the richest, most powerful men in the world, struggle in a way they hadn't before. The case was about more than just Internet Explorer. It was about how Microsoft did business. The government argued that Microsoft had used its dominant position in the software market to crush competition and maintain its monopoly. By bundling Internet Explorer with Windows, Microsoft made it the default browser for millions of users, leaving little room for competitors like Netscape to survive. The government wanted to break Microsoft's grip on the industry. For Bill, the trial wasn't just about business, it was about his legacy. He had built Microsoft from the ground up, starting with a dream, a vision. He believed in making technology accessible to everyone, and now that dream was being questioned. The government claimed that Microsoft's dominance was hurting consumers, that the company was making it harder for innovation to thrive. It was a direct challenge to everything Bill had worked for. The trial dragged on for years. Microsoft's lawyers fought hard, but the pressure was mounting. Bill knew that if the government won, Microsoft could be broken up, split into separate companies. It was a terrifying possibility. Everything Bill had built, everything he had achieved, could be torn apart. As the trial continued, it became clear that the case wasn't just about Microsoft. It was about the future of the tech industry. The Internet was becoming more important every day, and whoever controlled the gateway to the Internet, the browser, had incredible power. The government believed that Microsoft was using its control of Windows to unfairly dominate the Internet. They wanted to stop it. The tension was high. Microsoft's future was at risk. Bill Gates had to make some tough decisions. He could keep fighting, risking everything, or he could find a way to settle the case. After years of legal battles, Bill chose the second option. In 2001, Microsoft reached a settlement with the U.S. government. The company agreed to make changes in how it did business. They would stop bundling Internet Explorer so aggressively with Windows, and they would make it easier for competitors to develop software for the Windows platform. The settlement was a relief for Microsoft. The company would survive. It wouldn't be broken up. But things would never be the same. The trial had changed the way people saw Microsoft and Bill Gates. For years, Microsoft had been seen as the hero of the tech world, the company that brought personal computing to the masses. Now, some people saw them as a bully, using their power to keep others down. For Bill, the trial was a humbling experience. It forced him to reflect on how Microsoft had grown, on the decisions he had made along the way. He had always believed that Microsoft's success was a result of hard work, innovation, and a commitment to making the best products possible. But the trial showed that power could be dangerous, that success could sometimes lead to practices that weren't fair to everyone. The trial also changed the tech industry. Microsoft's settlement opened the door for new competitors to rise. Companies like Google and Apple started to gain more power, challenging Microsoft's dominance. The Internet was evolving, and with it, the world of technology. But even with the settlement, Bill wasn't ready to give up. He was still driven by his vision of a world where technology could improve people's lives. He knew that Microsoft had to adapt, to change with the times. The company continued to innovate, developing new products and expanding into new areas. But for Bill, the trial marked the beginning of a shift. He started to think more about his future, about what he wanted to do next. In 2000, during the height of the trial, Bill stepped down as CEO of Microsoft. He handed the reins to his friend and longtime colleague, Steve Ballmer. Bill remained involved with Microsoft as chairman and chief software architect, but he was beginning to focus on something else, something that would become just as important to him as technology. That something else was philanthropy. As we close this chapter, we can see that the antitrust trial was a turning point in Bill Gates's life. It was a difficult, painful period, but it also pushed Bill to think about his future in a new way. He had built one of the most successful companies in the world, but now he was starting to look beyond business. He was thinking about how he could use his wealth, his influence, and his passion for problem solving to make a difference in the world. The trial may have marked the end of an era for Microsoft, but for Bill Gates, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would take him far beyond the world of software and into the world of global change. Chapter 8. Stepping Down as CEO. In the year 2000, Bill Gates made a decision that took many by surprise. After more than 25 years of leading Microsoft, his company, his creation, he stepped down as CEO. For many, it was hard to believe. Bill had built Microsoft from the ground up. He was the face of the company, the visionary behind its success. So why would he step away? Bill's decision wasn't sudden. It had been on his mind for a while. Running Microsoft had been his life's work, but something was changing inside him. He was thinking bigger. Beyond software, beyond business. He wanted to use his resources and influence for something different, something even more meaningful. Bill's mind was turning toward philanthropy, toward making the world a better place, not just through technology, but through solving some of the world's toughest problems. In January 2000, Bill announced that Steve Ballmer, his longtime friend and colleague, would take over as the new CEO of Microsoft. Steve had been with Microsoft almost as long as Bill. He was passionate, energetic, and had a deep understanding of the business. Bill trusted him completely. Steve is the right person to lead Microsoft into the future. Bill said. But don't be mistaken. Bill wasn't walking away entirely. Not yet. Bill stayed involved with Microsoft as the company's chairman and chief software architect. He still had his hands on the big projects, the ones shaping the future of technology. He was deeply involved in the development of new versions of Windows and other key software. But the day-to-day running of Microsoft, that was now Steve Ballmer's job, and Bill was ready for the next chapter. This next chapter was about something very close to Bill's heart, his foundation. Along with his wife, Melinda, Bill had founded the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Their goal? To tackle the biggest challenges facing humanity: poverty, disease, education. These were the issues that Bill and Melinda wanted to focus on. They wanted to use their wealth to help people all over the world, to make a real, lasting difference. For Bill, the foundation was a new kind of challenge. In many ways, it was different from running a company, but in other ways, it was very similar. Solving global problems required the same kind of thinking that had made Microsoft successful: innovation, strategy, and persistence. Bill approached philanthropy with the same intensity he had used to build Microsoft. He wanted to see results, to make sure every dollar made an impact. The Gates Foundation focused on several key areas. Global health was one of them. Bill and Melinda wanted to fight diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV, diseases that were killing millions of people in the developing world. They funded research, supported healthcare programs, and worked to make life-saving medicines available to the poorest communities. Their goal was ambitious: to eradicate these diseases, to make them a thing of the past. Education was another area close to Bill's heart. He believed that education was the key to unlocking human potential, to giving people the opportunity to improve their lives. Through the foundation, Bill and Melinda funded programs to improve schools, train teachers, and give students the tools they needed to succeed, especially in underserved areas. In the U.S., they focused on helping students in low-income communities, giving them access to a better education and brighter futures. But this new path wasn't without its challenges. Philanthropy, like technology, was complicated. There were no easy fixes, no quick solutions. Bill had to learn a lot. He had to understand the complexities of global health systems, the realities of education reform, and the deep-rooted causes of poverty. It was a different world from the tech industry, but Bill was determined to make a difference. And yet, even as Bill dived deeper into his work with the foundation, his connection to Microsoft remained. He couldn't just walk away from the company he had built, from the world of technology that he had helped create. Microsoft was still a part of him. He was still shaping its future, guiding its direction. He helped develop the company's strategy for the growing internet and the digital world that was unfolding. He was there when Microsoft launched new products, when they faced new challenges, when they pushed into new markets. But Bill's focus was shifting. He had spent decades revolutionizing the world of technology, making computers accessible to millions. Now, he wanted to use that same passion to tackle some of the world's most urgent problems. His work with the Gates Foundation became his primary mission. He wasn't just trying to make technology better, he was trying to make the world better. For Bill, stepping down as CEO wasn't the end of the road. It was the beginning of a new journey. A journey that would take him from boardrooms and tech conferences to clinics in Africa, to schools in inner cities, to laboratories researching vaccines and treatments. It was a journey that was about changing the world in a different way, through giving, through helping, through solving the problems that affected billions of people. And as he made this transition, Bill Gates showed the world that success wasn't just about business, about money, or about power. It was about using what you have, whether it's wealth, knowledge, or influence, to make the world a better place for everyone. In the years that followed, the Gates Foundation would become one of the largest and most influential philanthropic organizations in the world. It would save lives, lift people out of poverty, and give hope to millions. And Bill Gates? He would go from being known as a tech pioneer to being recognized as one of the world's most important philanthropists. As we close this chapter, let's remember that sometimes the most surprising decisions are the ones that lead to the greatest impact. Bill Gates stepped down as CEO of Microsoft, but he didn't step away from his passion for changing the world. He simply shifted his focus from technology to humanity, from software to solutions for global problems. But even as Bill moved into this new role, his story wasn't finished. The next chapter of his life would be just as transformative, just as powerful. And the world? It was about to see Bill Gates change it in ways no one could have imagined. Chapter 9. A New Mission: Philanthropy. With the success of Microsoft, Bill Gates had become one of the richest men in the world. But what do you do when you have more money than you could ever need? For Bill, the answer was simple: give it away. Bill didn't just want to be remembered for his achievements in technology. He wanted to make a real difference in the world, to help solve the problems that affected millions of people every day. Problems like poverty, disease, and lack of education. His dream was no longer just about computers. Now, it was about changing the world. Bill and his wife, Melinda, had always believed in helping others. And so, in the year 2000, they created the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The mission of their foundation was ambitious: to solve some of the biggest, most challenging problems facing humanity. It wasn't just about giving money. It was about using their resources, their knowledge, and their influence to find solutions to problems that had existed for generations. Their first focus? Global health. In many parts of the world, diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV were devastating entire communities. These diseases were preventable and treatable, but millions of people in poor countries couldn't afford the medicines or treatments they needed. Bill and Melinda were determined to change that. They invested billions of dollars into finding vaccines, improving healthcare systems, and making life-saving medicines available to the people who needed them most. One of their biggest goals was to eradicate malaria, a disease that kills hundreds of thousands of people every year, most of them children. Bill worked with scientists, doctors, and governments to fund research, develop new treatments, and distribute mosquito nets that could protect people from being bitten. It was a massive effort, but Bill believed that with enough focus and resources, they could one day eliminate malaria for good. But global health wasn't the only issue that Bill and Melinda wanted to tackle. Education was also close to their hearts. They believed that every child, no matter where they were born, deserved the chance to get a good education. They knew that education was the key to lifting people out of poverty, giving them the tools to build better lives for themselves and their families. In the United States, the Gates Foundation focused on improving public schools, especially in low-income areas. They worked with teachers, schools, and communities to make sure that students had access to the resources they needed: better textbooks, technology, and trained teachers. Bill believed that by investing in education, they could help millions of young people reach their full potential. Internationally, the foundation worked to bring education to places where it was hardest to get. In many parts of the world, especially in rural areas, children had no access to schools. Bill and Melinda funded programs to build schools, train teachers, and provide scholarships for students who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford an education. For them, it wasn't just about giving money. It was about creating opportunities that would change lives. But running the world's largest private foundation was a new kind of challenge for Bill. He had spent most of his life building Microsoft, leading a company that was focused on technology and innovation. Philanthropy was different. The problems were bigger, more complex, and often much slower to solve. Bill had to learn patience. He had to understand that change wouldn't come overnight. Yet, he approached philanthropy with the same drive, determination, and analytical thinking that had made him successful in the tech world. Bill wanted results, and he wasn't afraid to challenge traditional ways of doing things. If a project wasn't working, they would try something else. If a program wasn't making an impact, they would change direction. Bill believed in using data and evidence to guide their decisions. It wasn't enough to feel good about helping people. He wanted to make sure they were truly making a difference. And they were. By 2010, the Gates Foundation had given away billions of dollars to causes all around the world. They had helped vaccinate millions of children, supported the fight against HIV/AIDS, and improved education for countless students. But Bill and Melinda didn't stop there. They wanted to inspire others to give too. In 2010, Bill, along with his friend Warren Buffett, another of the world's richest men, started the Giving Pledge. They called on other billionaires to commit to giving away the majority of their wealth during their lifetimes or in their wills. It wasn't just about writing checks. It was about encouraging the world's wealthiest people to use their money for the greater good, to help solve the world's biggest problems. The Giving Pledge attracted some of the world's most famous and wealthy individuals, including Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, and Elon Musk, founder of Tesla. They, too, pledged to use their fortunes to make the world a better place. Bill had helped spark a movement, one where wealth wasn't just a symbol of success, but a tool for positive change. But even with all their success, Bill and Melinda remained deeply involved in the work of the foundation. They traveled the world, meeting with community leaders, visiting clinics, and talking to people on the ground. Bill would often sit with scientists and researchers, discussing the details of vaccines and treatments. He wanted to understand the problems at a deep level because he believed that with the right knowledge, they could find the right solutions. As we end this chapter, it's clear that Bill's new mission, philanthropy, wasn't just a side project. It had become his life's work. He had spent decades revolutionizing technology, and now he was using that same energy, that same passion, to revolutionize philanthropy. For Bill Gates, it wasn't enough to have changed the world of computers. He wanted to change the world itself. Through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Bill was making an impact on a global scale. He was fighting to end diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries, giving children the chance to learn, and inspiring others to join the fight. And while the challenges were great, Bill knew that with enough time, enough effort, and enough resources, they could make the world a better place, one step at a time. Chapter 10. Health, Education, and Global Change. Malaria, Polio, HIV. These were not just words on a page. They were real problems, affecting millions of people across the globe. For Bill and Melinda Gates, these diseases represented a challenge they were determined to face head-on. Through their foundation, they set out to do something bold, something that seemed almost impossible. To eliminate these diseases, to save lives, to give people the chance for a healthier, brighter future. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation had always focused on big problems, but global health became one of their top priorities. In many parts of the world, diseases like malaria, polio, and HIV were devastating communities, especially in the poorest regions. For Bill, this wasn't just about numbers or statistics. These were people's lives. And he knew that with the right resources, with the right strategies, they could make a difference. Take malaria, for example. It's a disease that has existed for thousands of years, spread by mosquito bites, and still kills hundreds of thousands of people each year, most of them children under 5. But malaria is preventable, and Bill and Melinda knew this. They funded research to develop new vaccines, better treatments, and perhaps most importantly, simple mosquito nets. These nets, treated with insecticide, could stop mosquitoes from biting people while they slept. It was a simple solution, but it saved countless lives. Bill didn't just write checks. He visited the regions affected by malaria, talking to doctors, scientists, and families on the ground. He wanted to see the impact firsthand. It wasn't enough for him to hear that the nets were working. He wanted to know how many lives were being saved, how the vaccines were improving health, and how they could do even more. Bill believed in data, in results, and in finding solutions that truly worked. But malaria wasn't the only battle. Polio, another deadly disease, had been almost wiped out in many parts of the world, thanks to vaccines. However, in some countries, it still lingered. Bill and Melinda invested heavily in polio eradication efforts, working with governments, health organizations, and communities to vaccinate millions of children. It was a massive global effort, but slowly they were seeing progress. Polio was being pushed to the edge of extinction. Then there was HIV, a virus that had claimed millions of lives since the 1980s. Bill and Melinda wanted to slow the spread of the virus, to give people access to treatments that could help them live longer, healthier lives. They funded programs that provided antiretroviral drugs to those who couldn't afford them, bringing hope to people living with HIV and helping prevent new infections. But global health wasn't the only focus of the Gates Foundation. Education, something that had always been close to Bill's heart, was just as important. Bill believed that education was the key to breaking the cycle of poverty, to giving young people the opportunity to build better lives. In the United States, the Gates Foundation worked to improve public schools, especially in poor and underserved communities. The foundation funded programs to train teachers, improve school leadership, and provide students with better access to technology. Bill believed that every child deserved a quality education, no matter where they lived or how much money their family had. He wanted to give students the tools to succeed, to help them learn, grow, and achieve their dreams. But it wasn't easy. The U.S. education system faced many challenges, and there was no simple fix. Bill and Melinda faced criticism at times. Some people didn't agree with their methods, saying that their approach was too focused on data and results. But Bill never shied away from the criticism. He believed in innovation, in trying new things, in being open to failure if it meant learning something valuable. For him, solving these problems required bold thinking and the courage to take risks. Internationally, the Gates Foundation worked to bring education to the world's poorest children. In rural areas, where schools were often underfunded or non-existent, Bill and Melinda helped build new schools, train teachers, and provide learning materials. They believed that education was a human right, and they wanted to make sure that even the most marginalized children had the chance to learn. Bill had always believed in the power of technology to change the world, and now he was using that belief in a new way. The Gates Foundation supported the development of digital tools that could help students learn better. In some schools, they provided laptops, tablets, and online learning platforms. For Bill, technology wasn't just something that connected people. It was something that could open doors, create opportunities, and build a better future. But philanthropy is a long game. It takes time, patience, and persistence. Bill and Melinda knew that their work wouldn't solve these problems overnight. They were in it for the long haul, working with experts, governments, and communities to bring about real, lasting change. And slowly they were seeing results. By 2020, their efforts had helped distribute over 2 billion vaccine doses to children in the poorest countries. Malaria cases were declining, polio was nearly eradicated, and millions of people living with HIV had access to life-saving drugs. In education, they were seeing improvements in student outcomes, particularly in underserved communities. Yet, for Bill, there was always more to do. He was never one to sit back and celebrate for long. There were always new challenges, new obstacles, and new goals to reach. But Bill's work with the Gates Foundation wasn't just about solving problems. It was about giving people hope. Hope for a future where children didn't have to die from preventable diseases. Hope for a world where every child had access to education. Hope for a time when technology and innovation could help solve the world's toughest challenges. As we close this chapter, it's clear that Bill Gates's impact goes far beyond Microsoft and the world of technology. His foundation had become a force for good, changing the lives of millions of people around the world. Bill had always believed that technology could change the world, but now he was using his wealth, his resources, and his influence to change the world in a very different way. The battles against malaria, polio, HIV, and education inequality were far from over. But Bill Gates wasn't giving up. He was just getting started. Chapter 11. The Legacy of Innovation. Even though Bill Gates had stepped back from his role at Microsoft, his impact on the world of technology was undeniable. His influence was everywhere, in every home, every office, and nearly every computer. Windows, the operating system that had started as just an idea in Bill's mind, was now the most widely used software in the world. It had become the foundation of modern computing, shaping how people interacted with technology, how they worked, how they communicated, and even how they lived. It all began in the early days. Just 2 young men, Bill and his childhood friend Paul Allen, in a garage, dreaming of the future. They had a vision. A world where every person would have access to a personal computer. At the time, it seemed impossible. Computers were giant machines used only by big companies, governments, or universities. But Bill, he saw things differently. He believed that computers could be for everyone. And he was right. The creation of Windows transformed the way the world used computers. Before Windows, people had to type commands into a black screen, something that felt intimidating for most users. But Windows changed all that. It introduced a graphical interface where people could click on icons, open programs, and do tasks with ease. It made computers accessible to everyone, from students to business professionals to families at home. Bill had always wanted to make technology easier to use, and Windows was the realization of that dream. By the 1990s, Windows had become the standard. Every new computer came with it, and it was running on millions of devices across the globe. Bill's vision of personal computing had not only come true, it had changed the world forever. But Bill's legacy didn't stop with Windows. His innovations stretched beyond just one product. It was his belief that technology wasn't just for tech enthusiasts or experts, it was for everyone. And that belief drove everything he did. He wanted to create tools that could improve people's lives, whether it was helping businesses run more smoothly, giving students better ways to learn, or connecting people across the world through the internet. And the ripple effect of Bill's vision didn't just stay in the tech industry. It inspired a generation of innovators. The tech giants we know today, companies like Apple, Google, and Facebook, were built on the foundation that Bill Gates helped create. His belief that technology could change the world encouraged others to push boundaries, to dream bigger, and to create new technologies that would transform how we live, work, and communicate. The software that started in a garage with Bill and Paul Allen had revolutionized the tech industry. Microsoft had grown into one of the most powerful companies in the world, and Bill Gates had become one of the wealthiest people on the planet. But his legacy? It wasn't just about wealth or power or even the success of Microsoft. It was about how he used technology to open doors for people, to make life better for everyone. Bill always believed that technology should serve people. It wasn't just about making machines faster or more powerful. It was about making tools that helped people solve real problems. Whether that was a business person managing finances, a teacher educating students, or a scientist conducting research, technology was a tool that could make their lives easier, their work more efficient, their dreams more achievable. His influence went beyond business. As we've seen, after stepping back from Microsoft, Bill dedicated himself to philanthropy, using his wealth and knowledge to tackle some of the world's biggest challenges. Through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he applied the same principles of innovation and problem-solving that had made him successful in technology to global health and education. And that's what made Bill Gates' legacy so powerful. It wasn't just about what he created. It was about why he created it. Bill always believed in the power of technology to bring about positive change. And that belief carried him through every project, every challenge, every decision. He didn't just want to create products that sold well or made money. He wanted to create products that helped people, that improved their lives in meaningful ways. In the end, Bill's legacy wasn't just in the code he wrote or the software he built. It was in the way he looked at the world. He saw technology as a way to solve problems, to push humanity forward. And that vision, that drive to make the world a better place through innovation, is what sets Bill Gates apart. As we reflect on Bill's journey, we can see how much the world has changed because of him. From the early days of Microsoft to the rise of personal computing to the vast impact of his philanthropy, Bill Gates has left an indelible mark on the world. And though he stepped back from the day-to-day operations of Microsoft, his influence is still felt everywhere. Think about it. Every time you use a computer, browse the internet, or open a document on your screen, you're interacting with a world that Bill Gates helped create. His vision for a connected digital world is now our reality. But it's not just about the technology. It's about the lives that technology touches. Millions of students are learning through computers and software that wouldn't exist without Bill's early innovations. Businesses are thriving, connected to global markets through the systems he helped build. And through his philanthropic efforts, millions of people in poor and developing countries have access to healthcare, education, and opportunities that would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago. As we close this chapter, it's clear that Bill Gates' legacy is more than just one of innovation. It's a legacy of vision, of possibility, and of a deep belief in the power of human creativity to solve problems and make the world a better place. Bill Gates may have stepped back from Microsoft, but the world he helped create is still growing, still evolving, and still making life better for millions of people around the globe. And that is the true power of innovation. Chapter 12. Reflections on a Life of Change. Today, Bill Gates looks back on a life full of challenges, risks, and incredible success. He's no longer the young man who started Microsoft in a garage, coding late into the night with his friend Paul Allen. He's no longer the CEO running one of the most powerful companies in the world. But his journey, his impact, his vision, they are far from over. As Bill reflects on the path he has walked, he sees how everything began with a spark of curiosity. A young boy, fascinated by machines, wanting to understand how they worked. That curiosity drove him to explore, to push boundaries, to ask the questions that no one else was asking. And that curiosity? It never left him. It's still there in the way he looks at the world today, always searching for solutions, always thinking about what's next. Building Microsoft was an adventure full of risks. Bill had to believe in his dream at a time when few others could see what he saw. Personal computers weren't a household item when Bill started. Most people thought they were just for big businesses or scientists. But Bill, he saw the future. He imagined a world where every home, every office had a computer, where technology was part of everyday life. And against all odds, he made that dream come true. Microsoft changed everything. Windows became the foundation of modern computing. It revolutionized the way we work, communicate, and learn. And because of Microsoft, people all over the world gained access to technology that helped them achieve their goals, improve their lives, and connect with one another. It's a legacy that touches millions every single day. And Bill Gates? He didn't stop there. After stepping down as CEO of Microsoft, Bill turned his focus to another mission, philanthropy. He could have stayed in the tech world, continued to build new products, and grow his wealth. But Bill had a bigger vision. He wanted to tackle the world's biggest problems: poverty, disease, education. He wanted to help those who didn't have access to the same opportunities he did. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation became his new platform for change. It was no longer about computers and software. It was about saving lives, empowering people, and giving hope. Through their foundation, Bill and Melinda worked to fight diseases like malaria, HIV, and polio. They funded education programs to ensure that every child, no matter where they lived, had the chance to learn. They invested in solutions for climate change, pushing for a more sustainable future for the planet. And they didn't just write checks, they got involved, traveling to the regions affected, meeting the people they wanted to help, and finding ways to make the biggest impact. For Bill, this new chapter of his life has been just as fulfilling as building Microsoft. In fact, he often says it's even more rewarding. Knowing that the work they're doing is saving lives, changing the course of entire communities, gives him a sense of purpose that goes beyond business success. It's about humanity. It's about using the resources he has to lift others up, to make sure that everyone has the chance to live a healthy, educated life. But even now, Bill's journey isn't over. His work isn't finished. The world is constantly changing, and new challenges arise every day. Climate change, global pandemics, food security. These are the battles that Bill is focusing on now. And just like he did with Microsoft, he's approaching these problems with innovation, determination, and a deep belief that solutions are possible. As Bill reflects on his life, there are lessons to be learned. His story shows us that one person with vision and determination can truly make a difference. It's not about where you start. It's about what you do with the opportunities you're given. Bill started out as a boy who loved books and machines, but his curiosity, his drive to learn, took him to places few could have imagined. He wasn't afraid to take risks, to fail, to keep pushing forward, even when the path was unclear. And that's something we can all take away from Bill's journey. The world is full of challenges, but it's also full of opportunities. Whether you're working in technology, business, health, or education, there's always a way to make an impact, to create something that makes life better for others. Bill's life reminds us that it's not just about success, it's about using that success to help others. Looking ahead, Bill knows there's still so much to do. His work with the Gates Foundation continues. He's focused on bringing solutions to the climate crisis, improving healthcare in the world's poorest regions, and pushing for innovations that will make the world a better place for the next generation. He knows that change takes time, that the problems are big, but Bill has never been one to shy away from a challenge. As we close this chapter, it's clear that Bill Gates' legacy is more than just Microsoft, more than just technology. His true legacy is in the way he's used his success to drive change, to make a difference in the lives of millions. His story shows us the power of vision, the importance of persistence, and the impact one person can have on the world. And Bill? He's still that curious boy at heart, always looking for the next challenge, the next problem to solve, the next way to make the world a better place. His work isn't finished yet. In fact, for Bill Gates, the journey is just beginning.